Robert Duncan.
I'm going to read a poem, though, that's in some sense atypical for me. It came on its own, and I woke up in the middle of the night with the line, "My mother would be a falconess." I heard gay falcon treading her wrist in my mind. And then I kept trying to say, "Go away, poem. I don't want to have to do anything about this." And I realized I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't do anything. I had to get up and write it. And I got up and wrote it straight off. And then I was suddenly released to go back to bed and find the poem in the morning. My mother would be a falconess, and I, her gay falcon treading her wrist, would fly to bring back from the blue of the sky to her, leading a prize, where I dream in my little hood with many bells jangling when I turn my head. My mother would be a falconess, and she sends me as far as her will goes. She lets me ride to the end of her curb, where I fall back in anguish. I dread that she will cast me away, for I fall, I mistake, I fail in her mission. She would bring down the little birds, and I would bring down the little birds. When will she let me bring down the little birds, pierced from their flight with their necks broken, their heads like flowers limp from the stem? I tread my mother's wrist and would draw blood. Behind the little hood my eyes are hooded. I've gone back into my hooded silence, talking to myself and dropping off to sleep. For she has muffled my dreams in the hood she has made me, sewn round with bells jangling when I move. She rides with her little falcon upon her wrist. She uses a barb that brings me to cower. She sends me abroad to try my wings, and I come back to her. I would bring down the little birds to her. I may not tear into, I must bring back perfectly. I tear at her wrist with my beak to draw blood, and her eye holds me, anguished, terrified. She draws a limit to my flight. Never beyond my sight, she says. She trains me to fetch and to limit myself in fetching. She rewards me with meat for my dinner, but I must never eat what she sends me to bring her. Yet it would have been beautiful if she would have carried me, always in a little hood with the bells ringing at her wrist, and her riding to the great falcon hunt, and me flying up to the curb of my heart from her heart to bring down the skylark from the blue to her feet, straining and then releasing her flight. My mother would be a falcon, and I, her gerfalcon, raised at her will, from her wrist sent flying as if I were her own pride, as if her pride knew no limits, as if her mind sought in me flight beyond the horizon. Ah, but high, high in the air I flew, and far, far beyond the curb of her will were the blue hills of the falcon's nest. And then I saw west of the dying sun. It seemed my human soul went down in flames. I tore at her wrist at the hold she had for me, until the blood ran hot, and I heard her cry out, far, far beyond the curve of her will, to horizons of stars beyond the ringing hills of the world where the falcon's nest I saw, and I tore at her wrist with my savage beak. I flew as if sight flew from the anguish in her eye beyond her sight, sent from my striking roots, and the cruel strike at her wrist, striking out from the blood to be free. My mother would be a falconess. And even now, years after this, when the wounds I left her surely healed, and the woman is dead, her fierce eyes closed, and if her heart were broken still, I would be a falcon, free. I tread her wrist and wear the hood, talking to myself with drawn blood.
Ezra Pound.
And then went down to the ship, set keel to breakers, fought from the godly sea. And we set up mast and sail on that swart ship, bore sheep aboard her, and our bodies also heavy with weeping. So winds from sternward bore us out onward with bellying canvas. Circe's this craft, the trim-kifed goddess. Then sat we amidships, wind jamming the tiller. Thus with stretched sail we went over sea till day's end. Sun to his slumber, shadows o'er all the ocean. Came we then to the bounds of deepest water, to the Cimmerian lands and peopled cities covered with close-webbed of mist, unpierced ever with glitter of sun rays, nor with stars stretched, nor looking back from heaven. Swartest night stretched over wretched men there, and the ocean flowing backward. Came we then to the place aforesaid by Circe. Here did they write Perimedes and Eurylochus, and drawing sword from my hip I dug the L-square pitkin. Poured we libations unto each the dead, first mead and then sweet wine, water mixed with white flour. Then prayed I many a prayer to the sickly death's heads, as said in Ithaca, sterile bulls are the best for sacrifice, heaping the pyre with goods. A sheep to Tiresias only, black and the bell sheep. Dark blood flowed in the fosse, souls out of Erebus, cadaverous dead of brides, of youths, and of the old who had borne much. Souls stained with recent tears, girls tender, men many mauled with bronze lance heads, battle spoil bearing yet dreary arms. These many crowded about me, with shouting valor upon me, cried to my men for more beasts. Slaughtered the herds, sheep slain of bronze, poured ointment, cried to the gods, to Pluto the strong, and praised Proserpine. Unsheathed the narrow sword, I sat to keep off the impetuous, impotent dead till I should hear Tiresias. But first Elpenor came, our friend Elpenor, unburied, cast on the wide earth, limbs that we left in the house of Circe, unwept, unwrapped in sepulchre since toils urged of our pitiful spirit. And I cried in hurried speech, Elpenor, how art thou come to this dark coast? Camest thou afoot, outstripping seamen? And he in heavy speech, ill fate and abundant wine. I slept in Circe's ingle, going down the long ladder unguarded. I fell against the buttress, shattered beneath nerve, the soul sought of fairness. But thou, O king, I bid remember me, unwept, unburied, heap up my arms, be tombed by seaboard and inscribed, a man of no fortune and with a name to come, and set my oar up that I swung mid fellows. And Anticlea came, whom I beat off, and then Tiresias Theban, holding his golden wand, knew me and spoke first. The second time, why, man of ill star, facing the sunless dead in this joyless region, stand from the force, leave me my bloody beamer for soothsay. And I stepped back, and he, strong with the blood, said then, Odysseus shall return through spiteful Neptune over dark seas, lose all companions. Then Anticlea came, thy quiet Divus, that is Andreas Divus in Officina Vecli 1538 out of Homer, and he sailed by Sirens and thence outward and away and unto Circe. Venerandam in the Cretans' praise, with the golden crown Aphrodite Cyprim monumenta sortita est, mirthful, Oricalci, with golden girdles and breast bands, thou with dark eyelids, bearing the golden bough of Argesida, so that shines in the mind of heaven God, who made it more than the sun in our eye. Fifth element muds Napoleon. With usury has no man a good house made of stone, no paradise on his church wall. With usury the stone cutter is kept from his stone, the weaver is kept from his loom by usura. Wool does not come into market, the peasant does not eat his own grain. The girl's needle goes blunt in her hand. The looms are hushed one after another, 10,000 after 10,000. Duccio was not by usura, nor was La Calunnia painted. Neither Ambrogio Predis nor Angelico had their skill by usura, nor San Trophim its cloisters, nor Saint Hilaire its proportion. Usury rusts the man and his chisel, it destroys the craftsman, destroying craft. Azure is caught with canker, emerald comes to no memling. Usury kills the child in the womb, it breaks short the young man's courting. Usury brings age into youth, it lies between the bride and the bridegroom. Usury is against nature's increase, whores for Eleusis. Under usury no stone is cut smooth, peasant has no grain from his sheep herd. Blue dun number 2 in most rivers for dark days. When it is cold a starling's wing will give you the colour, or duck widgeon. If you take feather from under the wing, that is, let the body be a blue fox fur, or water rats, or grey squirrels. Take this with a portion of mohair and a cock's hackle for legs, 12th of March to 2nd of April. Hen pheasant's feather does for a fly, green tail, wings flat on the body. Dark fur from a hare's ear for a body, green shaded partridge feather. Grizzled yellow cock's hackle, green wax, hard from a peacock's tail. Bright lower body, about the size of a pin the head should be, can be fished from 7 a.m. to the 11th, at which time the brown marsh fly comes on. As long as the brown continues, no fish will take granum. That hath the light of the doer, as it were a form cleaving to it. Deus similis quadam modo, hic intellectus adeptus, grasped nowhere out of place. Thus speaking in Königsberg, zwischen die Wolken erzielt wird, a modus vivendi. Circling in eddying air and a hurry the 12, close-eyed in the oily wind, these were the regents, and a sour song from the folders of his belly sang Gerione, I am the help of the aged, I pay men to talk peace. Mistress of many tongues, merchant of Chalcedony, I am Gerion, twin with Usura. You who have lived in a stage said, 1,000 were dead in his folds in the eel fisher's basket. Time was the League of Cambrai, Ching Ming. Canto 45. With Uzura hath no man a house of good stone, each block cut smooth and well-fitting, that design might cover their face. With Uzura hath no man a painted paradise on his church wall, harpes elude, or where virgin receiveth message, and halo projects from incision. With Uzura seeth no man Gonzaga, his heirs and his concubines. No picture is made to endure nor to live with, but it is made to sell and sell quickly. With Uzura sinned against nature, is thy bread evermore of stale rags? Is thy bread dry as paper, with no mountain wheat, no strong flour? With Uzura the line grows thick, with Uzura is no clear demarcation, and no man can find site for his dwelling. Stone cutter is kept from his stone, weaver is kept from his loom. With Uzura wool comes not to market, sheep bringeth no gain. With Uzura, Uzura is a murrain. Uzura blunteth the needle in the maid's hand, and stoppeth the spinner's cunning. Pietro Lombardo came not by Uzura, Duccio came not by Uzura, nor Pier della Francesca, Juan Bellin not by Uzura, nor was La Calunnia painted. Came not by Uzura Angelico, came not Ambrogio Predis. Came no church of cut stone, signed Adamo may fake it. Not by Uzura San Trophim, not by Uzura San Hilaire. Uzura rusteth the chisel, it rusteth the craft and the craftsman, it gnaweth the thread in the loom. None learneth to weave gold in her pattern. Azure hath a canker by Uzura, Cramasy is unbroidered. Emerald findeth no memling. Uzura slayeth the child in the womb, it stayeth the young man's courting. It hath brought palsy to bed, lieth between the young bride and her bridegroom, contra natura. They have brought whores for Zeus's, corpses are set to banquet, they test Uzura.
Charles Bukowski.
Fire Station for Jane B. with love. We came out of the bar because we were out of money, but we had a couple of wine bottles in the room. It was about 4 in the afternoon and we passed a fire station and she started to go crazy. A fire station? Oh, I just love fire engines. They're so red and all. Let's go in. I followed her on in. Fire engines, she screamed, wobbling her big ass. She was already trying to climb into one, pulling her skirt up to her waist, trying to jackknife up into the seat. Here, here, let me help you, a fireman ran up. Another fireman walked up to me. Our citizens are always welcome, he told me. The other guy was up in the seat with her. You got one of those big things? She asked him. Oh, haha, I mean, One of those big helmets. I've got a big helmet too, he told her. Oh, you play cards? I asked my fireman. I had 43 cents and nothing but time. Come on in back, he said. Of course we don't gamble, it's against the rules. I understand, I told him. I had run my 43 cents up to $1.90 when I saw her going upstairs with her fireman. He's gonna show me their sleeping quarters, she told me. I understand, I told her. When her fireman slid down the pole 10 minutes later, I nodded him over. That'll be $5. $5 for that? We wouldn't want a scandal, would we? We might both lose our jobs. Of course, I'm not working. He gave me the $5. Sit down, you might get it back. What you playing? Blackjack. Gambling's against the law. Anything interesting is, besides, you see any money on the table? He sat down. That made 5 of us. How was it, Harry? Somebody asked him. Not bad, not bad. The other guy went on upstairs. They were bad players, really. They didn't bother to memorize the deck. They didn't know whether the high numbers or low numbers were left. And basically they hit too high, didn't hold low enough. When the other guy came down, he gave me a $5. How was it, Marty? Not bad. She's got some fine movements. Hit me, I said. Nice clean girl. I ride it myself. Nobody said anything. Any big fires lately? I asked. Nah, nothing much. You guys need exercise. Hit me again. Big red-headed kid who'd been shining an engine threw down his rag and went upstairs. When he came down, he threw me a $5. When the 4th guy came down, I gave him 3 5s for a $20. I don't know how many firemen were in the building or where they were. I figured a few had slipped by me, but I was a good sport. It was getting dark outside when the alarm rang. They started running around. Guys came sliding down the pole. Then she came sliding down the pole. She was good with the pole, a real woman. Nothing but guts and ass. Let's go, I told her. She stood there waving goodbye to the firemen, but they didn't seem much interested anymore. Let's go back to the bar, I told her. Oh, you got money? I found some I didn't know I had. We sat at the end of the bar with whiskey and beer chaser. I sure got a good sleep. Sure, baby, you need your sleep. Look at that sailor looking at me. He must think I'm Nah, he don't think that. Relax, you've got class, real class. Sometimes you might remind me of an opera singer. Yes, I mean it. You know, one of those prima D's. Your class shows all over you. Drink up. I ordered 2 more. You know, Daddy? What? Daddy, you're the only man I love. I mean, really love, you know? Sure, I know. Sometimes I think I'm a king in spite of myself. Yeah, that's what I mean, something like that. I had to go to the urinal. When I came back, the sailor was sitting in my seat. She had her leg up against his and he was talking. I walked over and got in a dart game with Harry the horse and the corner newsboy. The tragedy of the leaves. I awakened to dryness, and the ferns were dead. The potted plants yellow as corn. My woman was gone, and the empty bottles like bled corpses surrounded me with their uselessness. The sun was still good, though, and my landlady's note cracked in fine and undemanding yellowness. What was needed now was a good comedian, ancient style, a gesture with jokes upon absurd pain. Pain is absurd because it exists, nothing more. I shaved carefully with an old razor, the man who had once been young and said to have genius. But that's the tragedy of the leaves, the dead ferns, the dead plants. And I walked into the dark hall where the landlady stood, execrating and final, sending me to hell, waving her fat, sweaty arms and screaming for the rent, because the world had failed us both.
T.S. Eliot.
For Prelude. The winter evening settles down with smell of steaks in passageways. 6 o'clock, the burnt-out ends of smoky days. And now a gusty shower wraps the grimy scraps of withered leaves about your feet, and newspapers from vacant lots. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and at the corner of the street, a lonely cab horse steams and stamps. And then the lighting of the lamps. The morning comes to consciousness of faint, stale smells of beer. From the sawdust-trampled street with all its muddy feet that press to early coffee stands. With the other masquerades that time resumes, one thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. You tossed the blanket from the bed, you lay upon your back and waited. You dozed and watched the night revealing the 1,000 sordid images of which your soul was constituted. They flickered, faint, and when all the world came back and the light crept up between the shutters and you heard the sparrows in the gutters, you had such a vision of the street as the street hardly understands. Sitting along the bed's edge, where you curled the papers from your hair, or clasped the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands.
eyes that stayed behind the city block, or trampled by insistent feet at 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock, and short square fingers stuffing pipes and evening newspapers, and eyes assured of certain certainties, the conscience of a blackened street, impatient to assume the world. I am moved by fancies that are curled around these images and fears, the notion of some infinitely gentle, infinitely suffering thing. Wipe your hand across your mouth and laugh. The worlds revolve like ancient women, gathering fuel in vacant lots. Journey of the Magi. A gold coming we had of it. Just the worst time of the year for a journey, such a long journey. The ways deep and the weather sharp, the very dead of winter. And the camels, gaunt, sore-footed, refractory, lying down in the melting snow. There were times we regretted the summer palaces on slopes, the terraces and the silken girls bringing service. Then the camel men cursing and grumbling and running away and washing their liquor and women, and the night fires going out, and the lack of shelter, and the cities hostile, and the towns unfriendly, and the villages dirty, charging high prices. A hard time we had. At the end we preferred to travel all night, sleeping in snatches, with the voices singing in our ears, saying that this was all folly. Then at dawn we came down to a temperate valley, wet below the snow line, smelling of vegetation, with a running stream and a watermill beating the darkness, and 3 trees on the low sky, and an old white horse galloped away in the meadow. Then we came to a tavern with vine leaves over the lintel, 6 hands at an open door dicing for pieces of silver, and feet kicking the empty wineskin. But there was no information. And so we continued and arrived at evening, not a moment too soon, finding the place. It was, you may say, satisfactory. All this was a long time ago, I remember, and I would do it again, but set down this, where we led all that way for birth or death. There was a birth, certainly. We had evidence, no doubt. I had seen birth and death, but had thought they were different. This birth was hard and bitter agony for us, like death, our death. We returned to our places, these kingdoms, but no longer at ease here in the old dispensation, with an alien people touching their gods. I should be glad of another death. The burial of the dead. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering earth in forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Starnberger See with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar keine Russie, stamm aus Litauen, echt Deutsch. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousin, he took me out on a sled, and I was frightened. He said, Marie, Marie, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read lots of the night and go south in the winter. What are the routes
that clutch what branches grow out of this stony rubbish. Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats, and the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow at morning striding behind you, or your shadow at evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Frisch weht der Wind der Heimat zu. Mein Erichkind, wo weilest du? You gave me hyacinths first a year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing. Looking into the heart of light, the silence, schön und leer, das Meer. Madame Sosophists, famous clairvoyante, had a bad cold. Nevertheless, is known to be the wisest woman in Europe with a wicked pack of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Look, here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel, and here is the one-eyed merchant. This card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I do not find the hanged man, but fear death I walk. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equitone, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. Unreal cities, under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet. Flowed up the hill and down King William Street, to where St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew, and stopped him, crying, Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Miley, that corpse you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence that's friend to men, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecteur, mon semblable, mon frère,
Robert Lowell.
The old South Boston Aquarium stands in a Sahara of snow now. Its broken windows are boarded. The bronze weather-vane cod has lost half its scales. The airy tanks are dry. Once my nose crawled like a snail on the glass. My hand tingled to burst the bubbles drifting from the noses of the cowed, compliant fish. My hand draws back. I often sigh still for the dark, downward and vegetating kingdom of the fish and reptiles. One morning last March, I pressed against the new barbed and galvanized fence on the Boston Common. Behind their cage, yellow dinosaur steam shovels were grunting as they cropped up tons of mush and grass to gouge their underworld garage. Parking spaces luxuriate like civic sand piles in the heart of Boston. A girdle of orange, Puritan pumpkin-colored girders braces the tingling State House, shaking over the excavations as it faces Colonel Shaw and his bell-cheeked Negro infantry on St. Gaudens's shaking Civil War relief, propped by a plank splint against the garage's earthquake. 2 months after marching through Boston, half the regiment was dead. At the dedication, William James could almost hear the bronze Negroes breathe. Their monument sticks like a fishbone in the city's throat. Its colonel is as lean as a compass needle. He has an angry wren-like vigilance, a greyhound's gentle tautness. He seems to wince at pleasure and suffocate for privacy. He's out of bounds now. He rejoices in man's lovely, peculiar power to choose life and die. When he leads his black soldiers to death, he cannot bend his back. On 1,000 small-town New England greens, the old white churches hold their air of sparse, sincere rebellion. Frayed flags quilt the graveyards of the Grand Army of the Republic. The stone statues of the abstract Union soldier grow slimmer and younger each year. Wasp-waisted, they doze over muskets and muse through their sideburns. Shaw's father wanted no monument except the ditch where his son's body was thrown and lost with his niggers. The ditch is nearer. There are no statues of the last war here. On Boylston Street, a commercial photograph shows Hiroshima boiling over a Mazda safe, the rock of ages that survived the blast. Space is nearer. When I crouched to my television set, the drained faces of Negro school children rise like balloons. Colonel Shaw is riding on his bubble. He waits for the blessed break. The aquarium's gone. Everywhere giant, thinned cars nose forward like fish. Savage civility slides by on streets. A seal swims like a poodle through the sheet of blinding salt. A country graveyard, here and there a rock and here and there a pine, throbs on the essence of the gasoline. Some moat, some eye flaw, wobbles in the heat. Hair dark, hair thin, the fragment of a hair. A noose, a question. All is possible. If there's free will, it's something like this hair inside my eye, outside my eye, yet free, airless as grace, is the good God. I see our bodies quiver in this rustling air. All's possible, all's unpredictable. Old wives and husbands. Look, their graveyard gravestones wait in couples with the names and half the dates. In a flash I see us whitened into skeletons, our eager, sharpened cry, a pair of stones cutting like shark fins through the boundless wash. Two walking cobwebs, almost bodiless, crossed paths here once, kept house and lay in beds. Your fingertips once touched my fingertips and set us tingling through 1,000 threads. Poor pulsing fete champêtre. The summer slips between our fingers into nothingness. We too lean forward as the heat waves roll over our bodies, grown insensible, ready to dwindle off into the soul. sky floors, the invisible hope of the hopeless launched and cast adrift on the great floor that gives the final gift. Dear figure, curving like a question mark, how will you hear my answer in the dark? Water. It was a Maine lobster town. Each morning boatloads of hands pushed off the granite quarries on the islands and left dozens of bleak white frame houses stuck like oyster shells on a hill of rock. And below us the sea lapped the raw little matchstick mazes of a weir where the fish for bait were trapped. Remember? We sat on a slab of rock. From this distance in time it seems the color of iris rotting and turning purple. But it was only the usual grey rock, turning the usual green when drenched by the sea. The sea drenched the rock at our feet all day and kept tearing away flake after flake. One night you dreamed you were a mermaid clinging to a wharf pile and trying to pull off the barnacles with your hands. We wished our two souls might return like gulls to the rock. In the end, the water was too cold for us.
Sylvia Plath.
They are the last romantics, these candles. Upside down hearts of light, tipping wax fingers, and the fingers, taken in by their own halos, grown milky, almost clear, like the bodies of saints. It is touching, the way they'll ignore a whole family of prominent objects simply to plumb the deeps of an eye in its hollow of shadows, its fringe of reeds. And the owner past 30, no beauty at all. Daylight would be more judicious, giving everybody fair hearing. They should have gone out with balloon flights in a stereopticon. This is no time for the private point of view. When I light them, my nostrils prickle. Their pale, tentative yellows drag up false Edwardian sentiments. And I remember my maternal grandmother from Vienna. As a schoolgirl, she gave roses to Franz Josef. The burghers sweated and wept. The children wore white. And my grandfather moped in the Tyrol, imagining himself a head waiter in America, floating in a high church hush among ice buckets, frosty napkins. These little globes of light are sweet as pears. Kindly with invalids and mawkish women, they mollify the bald moon. None sold, they burn heavenward and never marry. The eyes of the child I nurse are scarcely open. In 20 years I shall be retrograde as these drafty ephemeras. I watch their spilt tears cloud and dull to pearl. How shall I tell anything